All right, so welcome everyone. So here in this lesson, we're going to discuss about a very quick preview of our scene assets and the scene. Right here in front of me, you could see that there are a lot of houses I have kept. The sky dome, pillars, poles, wires, the floor, and other elements of the scene. Just for the sake of some simplicity, what I have did is that I'm not including the house individually. I mean, I have already created the group for that. So the best place to find out is here, the outliner. If we're going to go inside the outliner, you could see that I've created three major layers, three major groups of the scene, and the whole scene has been described in three steps. First is called as a background, and if you're going to open that, you're going to see that I do have provided the house 1, house 2, and house 4 till house 6. So all these houses are properly grouped. I'm not named each and every element in that case, but I've just given some individual names for the individual houses. Moving forward, we do have the floor. We have the ground plane as well, the floor from the opposite side, the sky dome, and we do have the poles as well. And for the sake of simplicity, I've created the group of the poles as well. One interesting thing is that if we're going to play the timeline, you're going to notice that we have the animatable wires inside the scene. Well, it makes no sense that I could see such a fast motion of the wires, and since there is nothing inside the scene. So just don't worry about that. What I could do is that I do have another two layers where I've kept the fluids. Before I go to them, I would like to have some few discussion regarding this wire. Well, this is made up of the NURBS and then it has been converted to the poly. We have a little the history for that as well. And the good thing here is that we have already given some cache to it. Yeah, it is the geometry cache that I have assigned to it. And just don't worry, we're going to learn the detailed workflow of this, the making of the wire, the dynamics in the wire. I'm going to call myself as a bonus lesson, but it would be very important for those who just need some refresh. So we're going to learn this process of simulating the wire, which is now being getting affected by the phenomena of the dusty storm. All right. So this is the quick preview of the background. Now let's gonna focus upon the fluid ground. Well, we do have two fluids inside this. The one is the big one, which is the gigantic size that's called as the dusty storm, and another one is called as the fluid ground. So let me just gonna unhide it, and I'm gonna play the timeline for you. It's gonna be a little slow, but thanks to the cache, we do have the cache applied to it. I'm gonna take a pause and I'll go close towards that. So here it is. I'm just trying to show here that because of the impact of the dusty storm, another element of the dust is also, being getting produced and it's moving all across the streets. And I often gonna name it as the high speedy turbulent winds. All right. That's the another important phase of our course, and we're going to learn the simulation process. And first of all, we're going to learn that how do we going to create that, because this is very very tricky, and I just applied so many techniques to get look and feel, and this is one of the best I could have. And we're going to learn that how do we going to set up the 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 types of the emitter, and how do we going to extract them from the voxels, of course. So just go to the zero frame. I'm gonna hide that. Before I'm gonna hide, let me just disable the evaluation and then I'm gonna hide that. Now we're gonna open the last and the most important section, that is the fluids dusty storm. And this I have named, it has the big fluids. Let me just gonna reveal that. And of course I do need to have the disable evaluation. Let's turn that off. This is going to be a little big and crazy, so I may need to skip some frames because we're going to learn the technique that obviously we're not going to show up uh, the time that the birth, or you may could say the initializations of these fluids, since it's really really not realistic. It's pretty, I mean, it's pretty bad kind of thing. That's some uh, you can say the dust plumes are being getting raised from here from the rectangular region, and this just make no sense. So what we're going to do here is that I'm going to drag the timeline over, let's say 160, and then we're going to notice that we'll have a very nice impact of the dusty storm. It's going to take a little bit of the time since it's highly computational, so I guess it would take a little more time to give the look and feel. Yeah, here it is. So right now here in front of me, you can see that the gigantic, dusty storms are now affecting the house. And one another thing that I've just did is that, I've just, I can change the direction of the light so it would be easier for you to notice them. That's great. So here is the scene. And you know what? It's clearly apparent that once the fluid will start arriving, they will going to penetrate the house since there is no collision we have made. So from that perspective, what I've did is that I do have something is called as a proxy house if you're gonna unhide them. These are, you can say, the um, minimal kind of an encapsulations that that is being given to the detailed house. And since you can also see that the geometry of the house is little heavier, and I haven't used all the textures, but there is a polygon all around them, and just try to touch max detail I could. So I also just don't want the fluids to, get calculated with the detailed geometry, and it just makes no sense. So just for the sake of simplicity and to avoid the unnecessary rendering time or the computational times of the fluids, we have provided some low polygon piece of the geometry so that when once the fluid will start arriving towards it, it will gonna get paused or it will gonna adhere the collision with the houses. All right. You don't need to be really very precise with each and every section of this, but just some little tight encapsulation will gonna solve your work. And I'll go to my bookmark that I've created for that, and here it is. So the simulation will going to take place till 300 frames. So obviously it's going to be very big. And what I did in my final render is that, I have calculated the fluids since 0 frame till 200, but in my final output presentations, I have given the frame from 200 till 300 only. And still, I want to, go for some more higher frames. So you could consider that the fluid till frame 220 or 230 is the considerable amount because here all the negative space of this environment will going to get finished and this dusty storm will be having almost all these empty area covered up. This is where the simulation will gonna start. All right. So I believe it's quite clear to all of you. We do have only three sets here, and let's gonna talk about something more in our upcoming lesson.